Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. I hope you're having a wonderful May the 30th. And I have a few questions to answer in this video. If you have a question, please feel free to post your question as a comment in my most recent video, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next video. If you'd rather ask me your question as an email, you can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. All right, let's get on into it. Now, first question from Von Saal. Does Maitreya support veganism? All these masters without exception, and Maitreya is a master, does not need to eat. And a lot of them didn't eat for eons. But they live off the prana of the sun. Now, when it comes to humanity being vegan, or even these masters being vegan, once these masters are out, known for who they are out in the world, they will find themselves at some point in social situations where people are eating, right? Now, for themselves, they won't eat very much. They're not gluttons or anything like that, but they will be vegetarian or vegan, in that situation. They won't eat meat, they won't drink, those kind of things. If you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essene, the Gospel of Truth, Jesus was a very strict vegetarian and a vegan and was encouraging the people around him to be vegan, to fast, to cure themselves from diseases and those kind of things. And I think the need to be a vegan, more and more people will see it for themselves as a way to go, for them, you know what I mean? Now, when it comes to eating meat, the masters will tell you that not all meat that is consumed creates the same and equal amount of karma on the person. Because anytime you eat meat, it does create karma for you. It lowers your vibration down and those kind of things. And there's a lot of violent crimes that happen. Not all, but there's a lot of violent crimes, rapes, those kind of things that happen because a person eats so much meat that they actually start to become more animalistic in their nature. These would be people who are not very evolved anyway, but when they eat, they actually become and start to think more like the animals that they're eating. And so therefore they act more like animals, right? And according to Maitreya, had they been vegetarian, for instance, they probably would not have done those crimes in the way that they did. Now, that's not everyone, but that's some of them. Now, when somebody eats pig or cow, right, because of the blood, and there's so much blood in those types of meats, that's what creates the negative karma on the person. Poultry is a little bit less, but it's not, and there is still negative karma, but not nearly as much as there would be if you ate a steak or ate a pork chop or something. Fish is neutral. So it would, the masters would say, if you want to eat fish, there's nothing wrong with eating fish because like I said, it doesn't create any negative karma on the person. And then vegetables, it creates positive karma for the person. So hopefully that helps. Now, the other thing too about being vegan, okay, as a person starts to evolve over the course of their thousands and thousands of lifetimes, they start to come to the end of their sojourn as a person on this planet, okay? And they're starting to they're taking the steps to become a master, okay? Now, there are 5 great expansions of consciousness called initiations that Maitreya will be teaching humanity directly about these things. After the 2 great priorities are taken, are done, peace and the earth is, the environment is taken care of. Then he's gonna start teaching us about different things, the ancient mysteries, which initiation is one of those. Okay, as somebody's starting to approach what's called the first initiation, they start to become in contact with their soul. Their soul starts to create in them the desire to meditate, because meditation brings in more contact with a person's soul. They start to desire to serve on some level, those kind of things. But also the person would have the desire to become a vegan, be a very strict diet, strict exercise, don't smoke, don't drink. And they do it, it happens naturally because that's what the soul needs for its vehicle to do. Because in order for the person to take control of their physical vehicle, the nature of their physical vehicle, the desires of their physical vehicle, they have to have a very strong physical makeup. And so the person would naturally start to do those kind of things like be a vegan. Now, once that person takes that first initiation and starts working on the second or third, or, those kind of, the second or third initiation, it would be a great idea to be a vegan, but it's not 100% necessary. So for instance, a couple things about initiation. In the Bible, in the gospel story, there's 5 points in Jesus's life that were written in such a way, and the timing was written in such a way to symbolize the steps that people take, the initiations that they take in order to become a master. The first one is the birth of the Christ in the cave of the heart, or when Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And then there was a long period in the New Testament where there wasn't much that happened with Jesus, right? There was a couple things, where he was in the temple, but for the most part, his life was not documented very much from the birth until the baptism. The baptism is a symbol for the second initiation. And then the third initiation happened not long after the baptism with his disciples, the transfiguration on the mount. And then the fourth initiation is the crucifixion, and then the fifth initiation is the resurrection. So there was many years between the birth and the baptism, right? But then between the baptism and the resurrection, and the crucifixion and resurrection was just 3 years, right? So it was very quick. Same thing that happens in a person. There's many lifetimes between the first and the second, and then between the second and the third might be 1, maybe 2, and then it's just a few lifetimes after that, and then the person becomes a master. Now, people who have taken the second initiation, who who have a measure of control over their astral nature, which is much harder to do than even the physical nature. Okay. They, from the point of view of the masters, are considered babies. They're the babes in Christ. So in Revelations, I think, is where it says, out of the mouths of babes shall come the truth, or whatever, speak the truth. They weren't talking about literally infants. They were talking about infants in Christ, in the Christ nature. So, but people like Picasso, Einstein, Madame Curie, let's see who else, Martin Luther King, for instance, John F. Kennedy, those kind of people, had just a tremendous influence on their time, right? And they did it naturally. They didn't desire it. That was just because of the point in evolution that they were at. From the master's point of view, are still babes, are still little babies. So as Benjamin Creme used to say, if those people are the babies, what are the big boys like? The big boys and girls, what are they like? So, but someone who, like, for instance, Churchill, he was a 3rd degree initiate. He had taken 3 out of the 5 initiations and become a master. He was well on his way to being a master. Could not have done what he did in terms of saving England in the way that he did from the Nazi, occupation, had he not been very, very advanced. Abraham Lincoln, at the time that he was Abraham Lincoln, was a 3rd degree initiate. Now, if you read the history about Churchill, he used to smoke like a chimney and drink like a fish, so he wasn't a vegan at all, and didn't have that strict diet or whatever. It wasn't quite as necessary for him at the point that when he was Churchill as a 3rd degree initiate to be a total vegan, if that makes any sense. But if we could go back in Churchill's lives, go back several lifetimes, when he was about to take the first initiation, he had several lifetimes where he was a strict vegetarian, and didn't smoke, didn't drink, meditated, those kind of things. And then as he worked through the steps, he became somebody like Churchill. It was probably been a better idea for him not to drink and smoke, but it wasn't 100% necessary for him to do that. I hope that answers that question, Vaughn. So anyway, simple answer to your question, and not a 9-minute answer, is yes, they would support vegetarianism and strongly encourage it, but leave it up to the person to decide it for themselves. All right, next question, Peter Miller. And this question is going to lead me into the Masters article that I want to read for today. Do the Masters of Wisdom contend that the evil that men do will just melt away naturally, or will they have to be persuaded? Now, I don't know what he means by persuaded. The Masters view humanity's free will as sacrosanct and sacred. They don't infringe on it at all. So now, true evil, not just bad things that people do or selfish things that people do, will be sealed to its own domain 3,000 years from now. That's when humanity will be lifted above the influence of evil totally. Now, if you read the Bible, it says something about the beast being chained down for a time and a half. That's what they were talking about, an age and a half. So this age of Aquarius, we will be living in a much more peaceful, less evil time. Evil will still have its place in a way. Does that make sense? It won't be totally sealed off, but humanity will not be as influenced by those members of humanity that are truly evil personalities, right? Or whatever. And we won't do as much evil to one another as we have in the past, partly because these masters will be out open in the world. The other thing, we'll be living in a more peaceful society. Now, but evil in and of itself, will not be sealed off to its own domain yet. And then the next age, halfway through the next age, or the age of Capricorn, is when humanity will have to go through another great crisis, like what happened during World War II, but on the mental level, however that's going to look. I have no concept of what that means, but it's just humanity that war will resurface again. The war between the forces of light and the forces of darkness will resurface again halfway through the next age, so 3,000 or so years from now. And then humanity will seal off, with the help of the masters, will seal off evil, and it will be just, totally kaput and ended on this planet forever. And humanity won't be influenced at all by it. But it's another 3,000 years. But the selfishness that people do, those kind of things, a lot of that will change for the better, and as you said, naturally melt away, because people will start to be educated on the law of cause and effect from these masters, and we'll see how to live our lives, because of these great exemplars that we will have in these masters, and also from their own teachings, and how it will be very hard for us to justify within ourselves that evil and that selfishness that we do to one another, because we will see the ramifications of that law of cause and effect quite clearly on ourselves. Countries will see that too. You know what I mean? So countries like the United States that love to attack other countries in the name of freedom, but actually they're doing it out of their own selfish, greedy nature, will see the impact that it has on its own nation by attacking another country, and will not do it out of exhaustion, really, and say, oh, well, we can't do that because if we harm somebody else, it's going to come back on us, if that makes any sense. So I hope that answers that question. But the masters, in terms of evil, can contain true evil very easily and keep humanity protected from evil and the influence of evil to a very, very great extent. It's their problem, and the masters would say the biggest problem that they have to contend with when it comes to humanity is not evil. It's humanity's complacency and the inertia of humanity. So that's the big issue with them. Now, where that leads me into Benjamin Creme's master's article, because he talks about what to do when evil strikes. Now, the interesting thing about this article is it was written just a few weeks before September 11th happened in 2001. And had we done what Benjamin Creme's master suggests to do when evil strikes, we would be living in a totally different world than we are today. The other thing, too, that's interesting about this article and about September 11th for me personally was I was at a conference with Benjamin Creme in San Francisco in August of 2001. And I was planning on flying to New York in September at some point. And I happened to overhear him talking with a friend of mine, Phyllis, and she was apparently planning on traveling, I think, to Europe. And he said to her, and the only thing he said to her that I heard was, he said, if I were you, I would not travel in September. And I didn't hear why he said that. I just happened to hear it as I was walking through the lunch line. And it really perked my curiosity. But when it came time for me to book a flight to New York in September, just a few weeks after I heard this, because of his warning to Phyllis, I didn't book the flight, but I was actually planning on flying to New York on September the 10th and flying out on the 11th. So anyway, but this, Peter, might go a little bit more in depth into the ideas and the what the master's ideas would be on how to really fight evil, if that helps. So hope this helps. And it's entitled Detachment. Now, it says, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. There can be few, especially in the Western world, who are unfamiliar with this ancient Christian maxim. Passed down the generations from adult to child, it has found its way into the moral framework of countless millions. However, despite this long conversance, there are relatively few who appear to understand its meaning, and even fewer who live by its wisdom. Essentially, it concerns detachment. The evil, the criticism, destructive gossip, and actions which abounds in most so-called spiritual groups succeeds in its intent where there is no detachment. Its bitter and corrosive venom flourishes where it is given the energy and constant thought and defense. Better by far it is to leave it to the karmic law than to brood and fret against its source. This being so, it matters not the nature of the evil, the intended harm. The law is impartial and works to restore equilibrium. No manner of struggle to right a wrong or defend a reputation can better the law of karma in its task. Save then your energy for better things and let the law decide the measure and the timing of response. When evil strikes, the best defense then is detachment. When the hunted animal stands silent and still, the hunter baffled goes empty-handed. When a man is detached, free from fear and the need to retaliate, he can calmly leave the great law to fight his battle for him. Thus the evil gains not, nor waxes in strength. This profound teaching of the Christ is usually expressed as an injunction against carrying injury or hurt from day to day, thus prolonging its life and further hurting the victim. This relates closely to the Christian concept of forgiveness. When a man is truly detached, he is already forgiven. He waits patiently for the originator of the evil to realize the harm he does to himself, the victim, and the group, and to make amends. Thus is the evil blunted, and thus is it, quote-unquote, sufficient unto the day. When Maitreya, the great Lord, emerges fully and publicly, he will devote much time to the concept of detachment. Not for nothing is it central to his teaching. He has already given his thoughts on honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Not all at first will be able to follow his thoughts, but in time, his energy of love will awaken men to the practicality of his wisdom. Gradually, the old mechanical reactions of hate and envy will disappear as the social needs are met, as more and more are lifted up by the joy of working for Maitreya's cause. Thus will it be, and thus will the people of all the nations grow in stature as emerging gods. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.